Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of NerdCrave. And let me say, this episode is kind of important to me. I'll tell you why. The TV show Chuck has been off the air for 9 years as of today. 9 years, now that blows my mind because it's been a whirlwind journey from there to here. The TV show Chuck and the main character, Zach Levi, or Chuck, uh, were absolutely instrumental in turning me into who I am today. Zach Levi and the TV show Chuck are responsible for this YouTube channel. They're responsible for every step along the way of me becoming, a full-fledged identifying nerd. Uh, I'll go back and explain a little bit. Chuck launched. The first episode was in September of 2007, and at that time I was a pretty average guy, just coming on 30. I was into construction and just normal guy stuff. When this show came on the air, it awakened something in me. It was the one show that I would add to my PVR and make sure I never missed an episode. In 2007, 2008, I was not the kind of guy that was going to comic book conventions and reading comic books and playing video games. I mean, sure, I had a PS2 or an Xbox or something kind of shoved in the back of the closet or something, but I was having young kids at the time and jobs, career, buying a house, all that sort of thing, and I wasn't really focused on the things that gave me joy from my childhood. Now, when Chuck came along, that show rekindled an interest in me in all those things nerd. Not only did they, showcase great stuff like playing Xbox games with your friends and collecting comic books and all kinds of nerdy stuff, but the community that was built up around this TV show was something I have never seen before and will never see again. Of course, these were much earlier days on places like Twitter and YouTube, and things were a lot different back then in social media. But I've got to say, the community that was built up around this TV show was second to none. Shortly after the show launched, Zach Levi put up a website called The Nerd Machine. You can see I'm wearing the shirt here. This shirt is over 10 years old. And joining up with The Nerd Machine, I would find they had a chat section in there, like a live chat, like an MSN sort of a thing, where hundreds of the fans of the show would gather during each episode, watch the episode together, and comment on different parts of it. And, we made friends. I still have friends to this day, dozens of people that I follow on Twitter who were there with me in the beginning on the Nerd Machine. And so it was such an event. Every, whatever it was, Thursday night or whatever it was when the show was on, you would log into the Nerd Machine 20 minutes before the show started and start talking to all your friends about what you were hoping for this episode and that sort of thing. And, some of the stars would drop into the website. Zach Levi himself would come into the chat every so often. And it was just absolutely such a supportive community and exciting. At that time, being able to watch a TV show with hundreds of other people in a community setting was something that you hadn't seen before. The Nerd Machine also had quite a few different sections in it along the lines of letting blogs and things like that, letting people put up articles. They had a submission system where people had to be vetted and approved as legit authors for the site. I went through that process and I wrote some of my very first content articles that I had ever done on all kinds of subjects, and I have 6 or 7 published articles up there on the Nerd Machine website, which at the time was such a source of pride for my content to be featured amongst this community. Now, we move along to the struggle that the community had just to keep this show on the air. And this is another reason why the community is so amazing. They rallied around this show. From the end of season 2, there were rumors that it was going to get canceled, and we kept it alive through season 3 and season 4. All kinds of rallies and promotions. They brought Subway in as a sponsor, and thousands of people went out and not only bought and ate Subway, but took videos of themselves buying and eating Subway and posted them online to promote Subway and support Subway as the main sponsor of the show. And, it was absolutely just the most wonderful, intoxicating feeling to be involved in this community of like-minded people who absolutely felt the same way you did about something that you cherished. It was absolutely amazing. Zach Levi has gone on to be quoted several times describing what a nerd is, and pre-2007, people's idea of a nerd was, somebody with Coke bottle glasses who was, running around giving the Vulcan salute, just crazy, dorky, nerd was a bad thing. Zach Levi made being a nerd cool, and one of his quotes, which I've quoted, many times on this channel, is that being a nerd is simply being passionate about something to the point where you want to share your passions with everybody around you. Taking something that you care about personally enough to give of that thing back into the community. You can be a nerd of anything. You can be a pop culture nerd. You can be a comic book nerd. You can be a toy nerd. You can be an everything nerd. You can even be a nerd about things like fonts and typeface, paper. Absolutely no rules regarding what you can be passionate about, as long as you find something exciting and you want to share it with the world. And that was really the turning point for me, where I was able to say, yeah, I can be a fan of things like old 60s sci-fi movies like 2001: A Space Odyssey or A Clockwork Orange. I can be a fan of something like that to the point where I want to share that by writing an article and posting it online. And I eventually went on to start my own website, nerdmovie.com, based on the idea. A friend of mine and I put together a list, and we put it up on imdb.com. That list was the top 100 or 150 nerd movies of all time. And we went through all of our favorite movies that we felt related to, being a nerd, whether it was something like Weird Science or whether it was something like Star Wars or whatever, movies that really appealed to nerds. And we put that list together, and within the space of a few months or a year, that list on IMDb got over 250,000 views. And sure, a lot of people agreed and a lot of people disagreed. Some people thought the list was stupid. And me looking back on that list now, I can say I don't even agree with my own list, because I was a very young nerd back at that time. And now I would put together a list that is much more mature in my nerddom, let's say. But after that list did so well on IMDb, I went out and started a website of my own called The Nerd Movie, and I went about putting all kinds of movie reviews and all kinds of video game reviews and things like that on that website, which I maintained for 3 or 4 years. But I wasn't really finding the community. I wanted to relive that community that I had with the Chuck fan base, and I had not been able to capture that feeling of community. Sure, some people would come and read my articles or whatever, but I wasn't getting that back and forth. So from that, I moved forward and forward. I got into going to Comicons. A friend of mine was an artist, and I was able to kind of be an insider at several Comicons over a period of 5 or 6 years all over the country. And, I just absolutely love the ability to connect with other fans who are like-minded fans, whether it be Chuck or Battlestar Galactica or Star Wars or Attack on Titan, whatever your fan base is. I absolutely love being able to connect with people, and that's what brings us to here today. Everything that I have done up to this point, including NerdCrave, my YouTube channel, can be directly tied back to Chuck, the most incredible nerd TV show of all time. If you haven't watched Chuck, It's available on a few different places. I think it's either on Hulu or I'm not entirely sure. In the States, you can definitely buy the DVDs. I do have the DVD sets here. Absolutely fantastic show. Funny, comedic, spy. Chuck downloads this thing called the Intersect into his brain by accident. He opens an email he shouldn't have, and he gets the entire contents of the CIA and NSA databases downloaded into his head, and he's this gawky, gangly nerd, and he's all of a sudden filled with all this spy knowledge and things like that, and the potential for great storytelling uh, in that show was fantastic, and it was realized all the way to the end. Now, the finale, which was 9 years ago tomorrow, was highly contested, and I personally can't really go back and watch the finale. It was good in some ways, but it was really disheartening in other ways. So, and a lot of people feel like the whole season 5 kind of went downhill in a way, but the first 3 or 4 seasons of that show are just absolute gold. So I highly recommend that you go back and watch that. And if you care about what I'm doing here now, NerdCrave, what I'm doing here on the channel, absolutely check out Chuck, because the things that you see in that TV show are really the guiding force of what I stand for here today. Anyways, guys, thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for subscribing. Stay classy.